Chief Executive Officer, Quentin Gallivan.
How are we doing? Good? All right. Has it been a good couple days? Yeah. Good. How was the bowling last night? That was a lot of fun. I saw more drinking than bowling, but I guess that's very, very natural. Well, look, I'm going to introduce the afternoon session. We're coming in the home stretch. So we're almost there. So thank you for your energy, your passion, and your commitment. We're almost there. Now, what I'd like to do is something that I'm told you never do at a user conference, and that is to thank the people that put all this together. So you think that's a good idea to thank the people that put all this together? Yeah, I do too. We're a little different at Pentaho, right? We feel you're all family. It's more of a personal experience. So a lot of us presenters, we did presentations, we did decks, we rehearsed them, that's all we did. But to bring all of this together, this experience, the polish, the organization, the logistics, the fun bowling night, there was a really terrific team that did that. So I would like to recognize Barb. Can you stand up? Donna, Ro, of course, Jeannie, Amy, Veronica, Lisa, Rebecca, Jennifer, and our production, they're in the back, and our production company, Mosaic. Thank you, guys. You made this a great experience. So I was thinking about the last couple of days, and I had the opportunity, like you did, to see all the presentations and to sit in on the hands-on workshops. And I was thinking about, the term we use, putting big data to work. It was really more than a glittering generality or a marketing term. And I thought about putting big data to work the last couple days here. It's all of you that are putting big data to work. Pentaho's enabling it, but you're putting big data to work. So if I look at Mike Olson from Cloudera and his presentation yesterday, I think he had a great starting message, which was talk about the maturation of Hadoop. Last couple of years at his conferences, they're talking about Scoop and Uzi and Flume and the Zookeeper and the Beekeeper and all the animal menagerie that came about. And then it shifted, right? They're talking about big data solutions, ROI use cases, what they're doing to help companies in financial services and healthcare and life sciences. And I thought that was terrific. Saman Farr from FINRA, was he awesome or what? He talked about what FINRA is doing around big data and the cloud and big data analytics. And I sat back going, he's so credible, and it's such a serious thing that they're doing, which is really big data is holding up and a key part of the capital markets infrastructure in the United States. And the fact that they've scaled it, 75 billion events a day. And I sat back there going, this is serious stuff we're doing. This is mission critical stuff. And so I thought that was great as they're putting big data to work. Mike Altieri from Forrester, again, the focus not on the technology, but the focus on the customer experience and what big data can do to improve the customer experience and treat customers like celebrities in order to improve customer retention, satisfaction, and upsell. And then Kevin Eggleston from Hitachi Data Systems, talking about social innovation and the Hitachi IoT strategy, which is really about, IoT that matters, really about bringing IoT solutions that improve the quality of our lives. And I thought that was pretty cool and on message. And then walking around the exposition, our solution providers, right? All of them are talking about solutions. And so you are bringing and putting big data to work. And I thank you. We're going to continue to learn, and we're going to continue to enable that and partner with you. So in line with this, I'd like to present our next speaker who is putting big data to work and has put big data to work in terms of big data analytics, IoT, predictive analytics for the maritime industry. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jim from Caterpillar Marine Software. Jim? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A year ago, I had the privilege of walking across this stage to accept the award for Best Embedded Analytics and then, surprisingly, User of the Year. And at that time, we were ESRG. ESRG was a company of 25 people. We had to rely on efficiencies to get the great work that we were doing done. Since that time, in April of this year, ESRG was acquired by Caterpillar, and ESRG became Caterpillar Marine Asset Intelligence. So backed by a company of 120,000 people, we're still a 25-person company trying to get things done, realizing those efficiencies, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing that we have the backing of a big company, but we have the zeal and the drive, the fire in the belly, if you will, of a 25-person company still. So ESRG originally was founded about 15 years ago, and we were founded by a naval engineer, nuclear engineer. In fact, most of the people who work at Caterpillar Marine Asset Intelligence right now are either former retired naval enlisted officers who spent their time in the engineering field. Well, anyway, our founder was accumulating data by hand at the time about pieces of equipment, and he was just dumbfounded that when his aircraft carrier went into the shipyards, that exactly the wrong equipment was being worked on. It wasn't the equipment whose data said needed to be worked on. It was the equipment that, of course, you realized 2 years before when they were doing the planning, they said that's that piece of equipment's turn to be overhauled. Completely ineffective, and so the goal was, how can we take data from the US Navy and translate that into condition-based maintenance and operational recommendations? Since that time, although our biggest customer is the US Navy, we've expanded to commercial shipping and even beyond the maritime industry. One of our very important customers is a large liquid packaging company, but the idea is the same. Equipment fails, and how can you predict when it's going to fail? What can you do about it early enough so that the failure doesn't impact revenue for the customer? So, traditionally, if you think about Caterpillar, you're thinking about big yellow engines, you're thinking about those big excavators that you probably see alongside the road, mining equipment, things like that. Moving now into the marine space, and there are a lot of Caterpillar engines and pieces of equipment on maritime assets, whether they be tugboats or larger ships. But the goal is, of course, is to increase the uptime and decrease the total operating cost. That's what we want to bring to our customers. We've kind of seen versions of this before, and I think my slides are probably a little bit outdated, but the point there is the same, is that, that the Internet of Things is here to stay, that in the future we're going to have many things connected to the Internet, and all that translates to money. And there's a lot of money out there to be saved by our customers, and great inroads for companies like Caterpillar and other technological companies to exploit that data and make money for their customers. So Caterpillar itself, though, has been using data for a long time. For 10 years, this big truck right there, this is kind of interesting. I love this truck. This is a 797F mining truck. This thing is giant. If you've seen any type of Discovery specials or whatever, you've probably seen this truck. The engine is made in the Midwest and it's put on a train, and that train goes out to the mining site, wherever that happens to be. It's shipped wherever it happens to be in the world. And then 13 railroad cars full of parts are filled up and shipped to that same mining site, and this truck is then assembled there. This truck is too big, too heavy for highways. It lives and dies at the mining site. It's giant. That's 2 stories right there. Those guys, Jeremy, I don't know if you're in the room where Jeremy is sitting in this picture right here. Jeremy is not a small guy, and this is a big truck. But what I think is really cool about that is that this truck goes out to these quarries, and quarries have a lot of switchbacks and things like that. And these trucks are telemetrically equipped so that they are driverless. They go to a place to load ore, they turn around, they come back through the switchbacks, they dump that ore off, they continue doing that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then what we're realizing is that within 2 weeks, of this truck arriving on site, the customers have returned on investment of 100%. They've paid for this truck in the amount of extra ore and the reduced costs of moving that. And that's just from the telemetrics type of devices that are helping it go without humans necessarily in the loop. Throughout these large mining and construction sites, there are many assets, and we think of a mine, if you're thinking like you watch Gold Rush or something like that, it's a small mine, right? If you look at a mining site that encompasses, several hundreds or thousands of acres of space, and you've got trucks that are moving all the way around, you have to refuel these assets. So how do you do that? I mean, do you just wait till they run out of gas and then run out there with a fuel truck, or do you just pull in when you're at a quarter tank like we probably do when you're driving your car? There's probably a smarter way to do that. There is a smarter way to do that. And that is you have fuel points around and you're tracking your trucks, you know where they are, you know where they're going to go, you know what their load's going to be, and you optimize when they're going to refuel by where they are and how much fuel they have left, monitoring how much fuel they're going to projectively use based upon the loads they've been carrying. So asset location is important. We provide operating hours to dealers, and this is important because the dealer is the first line of defense against pieces of equipment experiencing an unintended type of failure due to parts failure. So the dealer knows when a piece of equipment is coming up for its routine overhauls, and the dealer is able to contact the customer and allow that customer to receive the parts on time where they can do the repairs so that the ship or the asset is going to continue to perform its function. And finally, the other one that I think is kind of neat was the driver biometric data. So I saw this room where these folks are looking at these screens, and they're actually seeing drivers in these vehicles. And drivers are kind of rigged up. Well, they're not rigged up, but the trucks are rigged up. And they're looking at eye motion. They're looking at how a head moves. They're looking at how body position is, and they're finding out when these guys are getting tired. Are they starting to fall asleep? Are they going to run into risk of damaging a piece of equipment or hurting themselves? So they're able to go in there and interject in there with the operators that you got to wake up, and how do we conduct our operations so that we keep our operators operating safely? So now we're going to do that in the marine space. Okay, our customers' needs. The number one is optimizing fuel consumption. A few years ago, maybe this wasn't as big a thing, and now you might look at fuel prices and say it may not be as big a thing right now, but it's a very big thing in the marine industry. We want to minimize the unscheduled downtime. Everything needs maintenance, but having to do maintenance when we're not planning to do maintenance, you're going to do something else is costly. You have to meet environmental requirements. This is something that's kind of new and it's coming out. IMO standards are being released and eventually are going to be enforced, reducing or calling on ships to reduce the emissions that come out from using high sulfur type of fuels. And they're going to have to be forced to reliably report on that. So the validity of the data, where it comes from, what it's measuring is going to be important. We also have to understand our customers' limitations. Our customers use older equipment. We're finding this especially on the smaller ships, but even bigger ships, because ships being built maybe older than 5 years ago are very mechanical in nature and not electronic, and so they have limited sensoring. Ships and ship owners have limited modernization budgets. It's not part of their business model. I mean, ships, if you buy a ship and you keep a ship for 10 years, you use it, you sell it to the next tier down, eventually get sold down to somebody who's, moving material from one place to another for a very, very small margin, and eventually the ship goes to one of those ship graveyards, and we've probably seen them all on the internet. And also, the crews are very small. Now, I remember in one of my chief engineer days in the U.S. Navy, chief engineer of a steamship, and I had 200 people working in that engineering plant. And these are 200 of probably the best trained naval engineers in the world. These ships are looking at 7 to 9 people. They may not speak the same language as the chief engineer, and they may not know anything about engineering. And so they have small, untrained crews, and we have to deal with that. So it's not a simple solution. right? If we're just going to measure engine data, that's one thing, but we don't want to just do that. We know that GPS data on the ship is available and it's important. We know that our propellers and our torque systems are available, and that's going to be important too. We've got ballast systems, overboard discharge systems, main engines, generators. We have gas turbines on some ships, air conditioning units, refrigeration plants, a lot of pieces of equipment. Even on one ship, we're finding out that this is big data. We're taking a lot of data, we're consuming this data at once a second, and sometimes 20,000 times a second, and we're doing something with it. We're mashing this stuff together. We're trying to figure out what does this mean for performance for the ship. So if it's not simple for one ship, it is not simple for an enterprise. So here we have thousands of sensors per asset, which is billions of points of data to be evaluated in a month across an entire enterprise. US Navy, we're measuring, or we're monitoring 105 or so US Navy ships, so that's a fairly large enterprise of ships, and that's trillions now of data points that are going to be evaluated every year. So what does that mean? Does that mean that we have a building full of analysts, right? We have somebody analyzing charts, these people are taking spreadsheets and they're looking at a bunch of data. No, we don't want to do that. We can't do that. What we have to do is we have to reduce that down to just a few people and let the software evaluate the data first. Let the software qualify the data so that it just takes out anything that's normal and provide the things that are not normal and why they're not normal to the analyst so the analyst can review those. So this is what we do for our customers. We improve energy efficiency. Again, very important. Avoid breakdowns and failures. We improve their environmental compliance. We improve their operations. And that's important too. How a piece of equipment is run day to day is different than how it's maintained from week to week, month to month, or year to year, because one drives the consequences of the other. So if you operate a piece of equipment well, you maintain it less, and then we optimize maintenance. So what do we use to do this, all right? We have an embedded solution. We use ETL. We use ETL very heavily. If you asked me 4 years ago if we used ETL very heavily, I would have said no. No, we don't use ETL at all. We use software developed by our software developers. But that's not really where we're going now. ETL, using products like Pentaho and the capabilities of Pentaho to be able to substitute for what Java developers would be able to do and kind of modularize that through ETL processes is definitely a way to go in our case. We have our own diagnostic solutions and rule sets, capabilities. That's kind of what the thing that was attractive to Caterpillar was when they acquired ESRG. We use analyzers and dashboards for our own use and also for the use of our customers. We have gone down the road of prognostics and predictive analytics using R and using Weka. And I tell you, one of the things that I was really surprised and really thought I was very, very pleased to hear today during the workshops yesterday was the using R inside of Weka, using Weka inside of R capabilities now, because we use both those capabilities with Pentaho, and each has their own role, and we're using those to help predict when maintenance needs to be done. It's not just that it needs to be done, but when's the best time for it to get done? There is a time when it's most economical. And so how do we do this with a small group? Still 25 people, right? Maybe we're going to grow a little bit. We're still 25 people. So we're rapid. We use the Agile development process. We use Agile for everything. And it seems to work for us. We make our integration easy. We make it so our customers don't feel like they have to invest in some IT guy or somebody whose job is to upgrade the software. We'll do it for them. We make it flexible in the implementation. So, taking a look at this concept of what we do, how do we help our customers monitor for when you deviate from normal? I guess would be the term. First, and probably maybe the most important one is, how is the ship operating with respect to a standard? This could be an OEM, original equipment manufacturer. Standards, this could be a baseline that's taken when the ship is first commissioned. So we have to compare to that, because if you deviate from that, that could be a problem. It might not be, and there may be other problems where you may not deviate from that, but you still need to know. So We're going to take a look at how does a piece of equipment compare with how it worked before. And that's kind of an open-ended one. Is it a month ago? Is it a week ago? Is it a year ago? That's all configurable. That's something that we do based upon what we see with the engine. If it's a new engine, if it's an old engine, those are things we want to see. But that's going to be important because a deviation, say a 2 sigma deviation from what its norm was a month ago, may not exceed the OEM limitations, and therefore won't alarm, but it should alarm because you're starting to move in the direction of bad. And the more time you have to do planning, the less expensive that maintenance is going to be. And then finally, when you have an enterprise of like pieces of equipment, how does it compare to others? And there you can figure out, well, why does one owner, one ship, one particular geographical location of a piece of equipment, why does it perform better or worse than other ones? There has to be a reason. It's the same equipment. It comes out of the shop the same way, but they're operating differently. So not any one of these three is maybe better than the other one. They complement each other and help you to determine when you're starting to deviate from what would be considered normal or good. So I've got a couple of case studies that we've done, and some of them, I think, one of them at least, I think is pretty cool, and some of them are, I think they're all pretty cool. So in this particular case, we had a tugboat company. They had a large fleet, and what these tugs do is they go on the inland river to the U.S., like the Mississippi, Columbus River, something like that, and these guys are small tugs, and they take barges, and they make barge rafts in the river, and it's kind of like a shipping terminal where you see all those containers, they get moved around, right? So they get put on ships at the right time. These guys move these barges around so they're ready for the tugs that are going to pull them up and down the river, to their final destination. They have to move these things around. So that's kind of like the customer there, and that's what he does. There are 2 diesel propulsion engines on these tugs. These are not very big tugs. So, when I talk about the engineering department, a tug is one guy, and I think he swaps between tugs. So it's one guy. So any help we can give this guy, the better his job can get done. So what we found was they were replacing a fuel pump pretty regularly. It was like once every 2 months, once every 3 months. And, being an engineer, I would say, well, there's probably something that could be looked at inside the manufacturing of the fuel pump because it shouldn't fail so often, but that's not really what our job was. Our job was, well, where can we predict when this is going to fail? Because if it fails at the wrong time, this tug is going to be placed out of action. If this tug is placed out of action, somebody else is going to have to serve that customer, and best case, it's one of that own company's tugs. Worst case, it's somebody else, and you just lost some business. So what can we do about this? So we got the data, right? We hooked them up. We're receiving the data. And what we found was that there is a like-new condition that we can monitor. And that like-new condition on the left-hand side, you see, is in green. On the right-hand side, that's what that baseline is right there. So that's pretty easy. And then what we noticed was about 7 days before failure, we started deviating about a standard deviation from what that normal was. And we had a lot of data for when this happened because we saw this replacement. So this isn't just based on one instance. This is something that was repeatable. We saw that 4 days prior to, that deviation was more significant, and 2 days prior to, you were significantly in the, what we call in the red. So if you were looking at that graph on the left and monitoring that, your eyeball might be able to say, I'm in the 2-day, or I'm in the 4-day, or I'm in the 7-day period of time, but we let our software do that. Our software is going to look at the data and it's going to say, oh, you got it 7 days before failure. So why is that important? It's not that hard to replace a fuel pump in reality. It's a lot easier to replace a fuel pump when you can plan it out and you can plan somebody else to do that work during that day. So what we found with this customer here was when you add everything up, it's about $35,000 in savings they had for being able to look at something that they replace about once every 2 to 3 months and just replacing it at the right time and not replacing it when it becomes a surprise. $35,000 isn't a lot, right? For a company like, a large company like Caterpillar, $35,000 is fairly small, but for a smart company, as my mom used to say, if you watch your pennies, the pounds will take care of themselves. And so that's kind of what this is let's take a look at where we can save money. This is low-hanging fruit. This was absolutely low-hanging fruit. This is something that we had the data, this was easy to do, and it was an instant return on the customer's investment. Same customer here, doing the same type of barge moving. And so this is interesting. As I mentioned before, number one for our maritime customers, their concern is excess fuel consumption, so how they deal with that. And so they wanted to figure out, well, how could we save money on fuel for our tugs? And so we thought about it, and so we said, okay, let's talk to the customer and let's find out the conditions under which it does its stuff, that the tug works. So there was a situation where a tug is working, where it's pushing barges. So it's actively in the river pushing barges. So that's a working condition. Then it's in the river and it's kind of sitting around waiting to move a barge, and that's another condition. Then there's another condition where it's transiting. So it's going from wherever it was docked to wherever the barge island is that it has to go move things around. That's another condition. And then there's sitting along pier side. So what we found as we were looking at this is that these guys were, we used some BI tools to look at this in a stacked column, and so we could see how much time these tugs were spending sitting idle alongside the pier. That was a lot of time. I mean, it was sometimes 12, 18 hours a day that they were sitting there, and that's not 12 or 18 hours continuous, but 12 or 18 hours during the day. So what we said is that, if you had longer idle periods of like 6 to 8 hours or something like that, couldn't you just shut the engines down? I know as a steam engineer, you shut something down, good luck starting it back up. You're going to have leaks and everything else. But with these things, we asked the question, how long do you need to run? And they said about 7 minutes. So, why weren't you shutting your engines down as a normal thing? Well, it's because they never did it that way. I mean, they've always done it. They're always ready to go. So we found that with this particular customer, saving on 2 to 4 gallons of burn per hour over the number of vessels they have, and if they change the way that they operate, it's a little bit over $2 million a year in fuel savings. So again, a little bit higher than a $35,000, but again, it's addressing the key thing that our customers are looking for, which is savings in fuel consumption. Now I think this is kind of a neat case study right here. So here's our problem set. We have a US flag roll-on, roll-off ship. A roll-on, roll-off ship is a car carrier. So they move vehicles from the US to Europe, and they move Mercedes back to the US so that people can drive those cool cars. And it's US flagged, and that's really important because a US flagged ship is different than foreign flag ships in that they have certain pay requirements that they have to meet for their sailors. So anything that cuts into the bottom line, they have to economize someplace else. So they're really concerned about saving fuel. So they wanted us to take a look at fuel efficiency, and we looked at a whole bunch of things. First thing we did is to take a look at what are the things that contribute to fuel efficiency, and some of them are pretty intuitive. Your main engine performance and your generator engine performance, how well are those engines performing? Other things, how much electricity is being used on the ship? Is there a way to regulate that? Does it always have to be used at the same time? If it's a cruise ship, for example, it's almost a constant. You're not going to be able to really do much with that, but with a ship like this, maybe you could. And then environmentals, there's wind, there's current, there's sea state, there's hull growth. And these are the data sources we had available. So again, in the way we look at big data, it's a lot of sensors, it's a lot of sources, it's mashing that data together. So we had main engines, we had generators, we have fuel meters, we have torque meters, and we have GPS. So we have quite a few things to blend together and take a look at. So some value levers that we worked on for our customers, and these are all kind of fun to work with. We looked at which of your aux engines should you operate at a time. Some of them were better than others. A kind of neat thing was, if you turn the lights out on those decks where those automobiles were, how much money would you save? It's a little bit, but it saves some. But the big one that we looked at was, and of course this is after the fact when we see it, but was the hull fouling, the growth of seaweed, barnacles, stuff like that on the hull and on the propeller. So we didn't make them fill out this log right here, but this is kind of representation of what we told them is you're going to get a hull cleaning. We knew when they were going to get a hull cleaning. We said, okay, before your hull cleaning and after your hull cleaning, let's do some measurements inside the Chesapeake Bay. So it's in the same area, so we're comparing apples to apples. And we said, okay, operate at this speed for this long a period of time, and just tell us when you did it, because we're collecting the data. We don't need you to fill it out. We've got that data. So we collected that data for them. And again, it was very important for us to be operating in the same periods of time so that we could look at, is the efficiency of a hull cleaning going to be significant? Because that's what the real question was. They were paying about $35,000 every 2 years to have the hull cleaned. It's called an in-water hull cleaning. So they're sitting alongside a pier. They're unloading vehicles, and they've got divers, and they're scrubbing the underside of the ship. $35,000, was it worth it? Were they realizing those savings? Well, we analyzed the data, and we realized that they were. They were saving, on an average, 350 kilograms of fuel, which at 60 cents a kilogram is $210 an hour that they were saving. So it's a pretty significant amount of fuel that they're saving just on that fuel right there. And they were happy with that information. They realized that, wow, the hull cleaning is definitely worth it. But we looked at it and said, well, I'm not sure you're asking the right question. I think the right question isn't, is my hull cleaning effective when I do it? The real question is, how many of these should I be doing? And so they do a hull cleaning every 2 years. What we were able to look at through their performance information that we're collecting is that every month after hull cleaning, and we know this from experience, is that hull begins to foul and foul and foul. And over time, that fouling is going to accumulate, and there's always going to be a cost of excess fuel consumed due to hull fouling. But what really would that look at? And so we looked at it and said, well, if you wait 2 years for your hull cleaning, and this particular customer had a fleet of 8 ships, and they weren't all the same hull form, so we did a little bit of estimating on some of them. But your excess fuel costs for all these ships, if you only do this every 2 years, it's like $6 million. That's a lot of money. And you're wondering if $35,000 is worth it. You're spending $6 million in excess fuel consumption. So we propose that they do condition-based hull cleaning. And for this, for 8 ships that we estimated based upon the data that we had available, that their excess fuel costs would be managed to around $2 million. It's still a lot of money, but you have to keep in mind, and this is something we have to tell the customer too, is there's always going to be that excess fuel cost. You just have to minimize that. So that's what we did. We looked and said, well, you do one hull cleaning, effectively, the effective cost of your hull cleaning is $1.3 million for that one ship, because you have the $35,000, and you have all that excess fuel that you're consuming. Why don't you slide that bar over there to where those curves intersect, add those curves together, that's going to give you the minimal net effective cost of the hull cleaning. And that means that if you do about 6.2, or just round it to 6 hull cleanings in the course of 2 years or 3 a year, you're going to get the most bang for your buck out of that hull cleaning. This is something that the customer did not know. It was something the customer did not have the data for. It's something that we were able to take that data and transform, data into information into dollars. And I always say, if you can't turn data into dollars in 3 steps, you've got to really rethink your process. So, in summary, from what CAT, Marine Asset Intelligence, is looking for in big data, first is that it doesn't have to be big. I mean, really big. Like we probably fall when Mike was showing those slides the other day, there's a tiny little sliver of up to maybe 40 terabytes or 90 terabytes. We probably fall in there. So we don't have a lot of data. But the value that data brings to the customer, it's got to be big. I mean, that's what helps make it big data. What we found is that you've heard that the sum is better or bigger or whole or whatever than the sum of the individual parts. So that's what we're finding, is that we're taking a lot of different sources coming in. Each one provides information, and maybe some pretty good information, but when you kludge it all together, smash it up, you're getting more value from it. I mean, it really is a lot better than analyzing individual pieces of data. we have provided fleet owners better insight into their asset performance as well as their enterprise performance. And this kind of is self-perpetuating. When they see that they're saving money, they're less reluctant to spend money to see that they're going to make save even more money. I kind of addressed this before. I call it compounded interest, and that really is, if you try to address all those things you can, even though they might be small, they add up to a lot, and they add up to a lot across an enterprise. And you really can't underestimate the value to a ship owner of saving money quickly. I mean, the fuel pump is a good example. To be able to come on board and say, you just installed the software, and now I'm telling you, we can save you a lot of money every time you have to change one of these fuel pumps. I mean, that gets their interest right there. Sometimes the customer doesn't know what he needs. The customer is always right, but sometimes you have to help guide them to where they could be righter. And one of those was our example with our customer that was looking at the value of the hull cleaning. We're finding that really the question you need to ask was something that, we're bringing, a couple hundred years worth of, at-sea experience to the customer and saying, this is what I think you should be asking. When I talked before about some of these engines not being sensorized really well, that's what happens is they see this success and they say, the first question, you almost got them hooked, right, is well, how much would it cost to sensorize this engine? Okay, well, that's a good question. So you can go through, if you add this sensor and this sensor and this sensor, this is what we can bring in, and now we'll be able to collect more data and you're going to be able to save more money. As I mentioned before, if we can't clearly connect this to dollars for our customer, I mean, we have to do it internally, right? If you work with a bunch of software developers, those guys will, they will shine the buttons on a piece of software, but if you ask them what the value is to the customer, it's like, I don't know. But you have to ask that, you have to ask it all the time. You're connecting it to the customer because the customer's not going to pay money for something that's not going to bring them money. So anyway, that's my presentation. Here's some contact information if anybody's interested in hearing more about our success stories, or if you got a fleet of ships and you need some software installed, we'll be able to help you. Anyway, thanks everyone.
Please join me in welcoming Rod Squires, Executive Vice President for Worldwide Sales, Pentaho.
Hello, folks. What a sophisticated use case that was. Wow. And I think that was the first one he deployed, and what do you say, about $2 million of savings off one. So, Jim, thank you very much. Nice job. Before we talk about our excellence wins, and by the way, you can tell very easily why Jim won that award last year, Caterpillar, no doubt about it, right? Before we present these awards, just a couple observations of what I'm hearing. All of you have told me over the last couple days, and as I travel around the world, what I hear. And here's what I hear, and maybe you'll agree with some of this stuff. First of all, this big data landscape is changing very rapidly, right? The tools, a lot of the tools that are out there are incomplete. This is what customers are telling us all the time. It takes a lot of effort to embark on this. In addition, I can't find the resources, and when I find the resources, I can't keep them. Or I'll hire them, and within 6 months, they'll want a $40,000 raise and a title and a plant and in a corner office, and then they leave and go to Google or Facebook, right? These are some of the challenges. The third thing I constantly hear is that the pressure from the business is mounting like it's never been before. If you think back to 2000, there was a time when you could delay cloud deployments. Because as IT people, what we would say, we would tell the business it's not secure. You don't want to put your precious data up there. And we probably delayed that from 2000 to 2007 roughly, right? And then finally it became secure and we were able to deploy stuff in the cloud and people started to embrace it. But that's not the case now. We can't delay this tide. Why is that? It's because I think the business users and the business executives are reading every couple days a paper of a successful story, like Jim's. And they're saying, why can't we do that? Let's go. Let's hurry up, right? And yet we have all the challenges of difficult resources. A lot of the tools are immature and incomplete. I think Cloudera and Hortonworks has released, I want to say 13 or 14 versions in the last 18 months alone. We've got Spark 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, now it's on 1.4, right? So you got this continually changing landscape. We don't have the resources of people to do it. So it's like the perfect storm. And so what you are telling us is that what you're really looking for is a vendor that can kind of insulate you from that complexity, right? Someone that can morph and change as the technology changes. And it's going to continue for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, right, at least. Look how long it took the relational data store technology to settle back 20 years ago. So why do I tell you all this? I tell you all this because these 5 companies I'm going to talk about, despite the odds of all those challenges, have completed some very interesting projects that are just amazing. I'm going to talk about those in a second. Very interesting use cases I think you'll find. So let me talk a little bit about the awards. So there are 5 different categories of the awards. There are 5 judges. If you're familiar with Howard Dresner, he was one of them, and Craig Wentworth, another one. Very well-known business analysts. And there are 5 winners. And how we did this is across 3 measurements, and we had entries all over the world. And the factors were creativity, impact, and business value. And Jim won that last year at Caterpillar, right? So the first category I'd like to share with you is around big data. And you heard a lot about this over the last couple days and even before that. We're talking about an organization that has to capture every trade that happens in North America across 4,200 brokerage, so E-Trade, Ameritrade, any kind of financial institution in the world. Not only do they have to capture that information, but then they have to get the forensic evidence inside that particular transaction. So I'm not just looking at trends, right? I have to get forensic evidence because I have to file a claim that has to hold up in the court of law. So I have to get the actual transaction. And you've heard that this data spans anywhere from 20 to 75 billion records every single day. And I got to find a way to interrogate that data and find a needle in a haystack. So Scott Donaldson says, I can find a needle in a haystack, that's easy. I burn the hay. But to find a slightly bent needle in a stack of needles, that's a whole different story. So I'd like to announce our first winner in the big data category. I think you've already guessed it, and that is Matt with FINRA. Thank you, Matt. Come on up. Congratulations. Well done. Well done. We're going to get... See you in a bit. You want this? There you go. Okay, next category is enterprise deployment, right? And so this category is for an organization that is deploying the tool set not across a few users, but several thousand, right? In this particular case, it's over 15,000 users. And what's interesting about this is the company itself, and some of you may have attended a session. This organization is extremely detail-focused, right? We're talking about scientists, 12,000 scientists. 12,000 scientists that smash particles together in a tube, I'll call it a tube, they probably have some other better sophisticated word for it, a 17-mile tube that goes between France and Switzerland, under the ground. And they're smashing these particles together to try to find the origin of Earth, right, and the origin of the world. And if you think about that. And what's interesting is you have an organization that has half their facility in one country and half the facility in another country. So moving a camera, a high-density camera, which, by the way, captures 400 million images every single second, generates 2.5 terabytes of data every second, which is mind-boggling. And to do that across, and then to move that equipment or any facility logistics across 2 countries, right? I am, in essence, generating 80 custom forms every time I do that. So the point being, this organization is using Pentaho to manage all the back office operations, HR and finance, and have to serve an audience that is extremely detailed-oriented that encompasses 12,000 scientists. And so with that, the people that you probably attended this, I'd like to congratulate CERN, our enterprise deployment winner. Yes, Derek and excellent, guys. Congratulations. Derek, congratulations. Yes. It's yours. You keep it, not me. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Excellent. The next category is for best ROI. And this is pretty topical stuff, I think. And the reason why I say that is there's a tremendous trend right now to try to get transparency with citizens paying taxes. And if I'm a citizen paying taxes in a country, or I'm sorry, a county, and I want to determine whether or not we should take on more debt and issue another bond, I want to know if the county can afford it, right? I want to know if the county can afford that type of spend. I want complete transparency if I'm a citizen. You know, commercial companies are providing visibility, right, and transparency. Commercial companies are. Why can't the government? Why can't counties and towns? I want to see the data. I'm sorry, trust is out the window. I want to see if we can afford this additional expense, right? And so an example is, and Aaron talks about this, the city of Detroit. We all know what happened there, and it's very unfortunate. There are officials at the city of Detroit that said, we have all the data. If we knew what we know today about what that data was telling us a few years ago, we think we could have avoided bankruptcy. And we wish we had tools from this company to do that. And the best ROI winner is from Momex. So Aaron, Stephanie, Larry, please come up. Congratulations. Awesome. Congratulations. All right. Nice. Yes. Yes. All right, the next category, embedded analytics. This is an interesting use case. I think we all experience this. So we watch TV at home, and then we're halfway through a show, and we pause the TV, right? And then we pick up the TV, maybe on our mobile device or on our iPad or something like that later on. But what we're watching is not live TV anymore, are we? We're watching streaming content. So I am now a fractional user. I'm watching a little bit here, I'm watching it on this device, and I'm watching a third device. I'm spread all over the place. How am I going to capture revenue from you? How am I going to advertise and stream commercials to you? But if you're looking at it 4 days later, if you're looking at the video 10 days or 6 months later than it was originally created, I don't want to be looking at commercials of cigarettes, because that was a long time ago, even though I'm watching a movie today. I want to watch topical advertisers that I'm interested in today. And there's a whole industry called dynamic ad insertion, DAI, that does just that. So we now have a multiple screen user that we got to rely on now to get this data out and to do analytics on it, because what I want to be able to do now, if I'm Comcast and all the cable companies, for example, I want the data that tells me who's watching what. Did they watch all the movie? Did they rewind it? How many times did they watch it? And did they watch it on an Android device or an iPad or on a computer? And where did they watch it, right? And to do all that requires tremendous analytics. And there's a company that's leading this industry, and I'd like to congratulate this winner, and these are the folks from Black Arrow. Times and we get the pass down, right? All right, last category, platform innovation. This is another one I think we can all relate to. The title fits what we're going to talk about here. And everyone's familiar with streaming music, right? Pandora and Spotify and those type of musics, right? We all have used those, and they're relatively inexpensive, and we like it. But what big data does and what it's doing, it's changing the paradigms of businesses. So for example, if I'm an artist, a musician of some sort, why do I have to pay a record label? Why do I have to do that? Because now I can push out my own music myself. Right now I got to create my brand and so forth, but people that do have the brand like Jay-Z and Beyonce, I'm trying to be hip now, but they are actually investors in this company, and they are providing almost the ability for any artist, instead of trying to attract an expensive record label and have to pay them 75% royalties, I can now be my own artist and go ahead and push my music out to all of us for a fraction of what I have to pay for that record label, cutting out entirely a middle layer in the music industry. Fascinating stuff. And this company calls Pentaho and PDI, and I'm going to steal this phrase and put it in our marketing material now, a Swiss Army chainsaw. And that's what they say, that the power of it, and I saw a picture of it. It's a little frightening, but I like it. So with that, I would like to congratulate Tidal and Arthur. Arthur, please come up. Yes, oh yes. So we all have our folks backstage, and you're wondering, is there really a green room back there? It's not green, but there is a little room back there. There's no champagne, there's no crackers and cheese, but there is a facility back there. And there are 4 or 5 audio engineers and video engineers back there. And before you get up here, they whisper to each other. I'm like, what are they whispering? They're placing bets whether or not you're going to trip on this step, which is a little unusual. But anyhow, so the final winner, right? So we take a look at all the overall winner that stood out after all the scoring. And I think you guys can probably guess that they've done a fabulous job, and that is the folks at FINRA. So Matt, if you can come back out, yeah. The second one. And he's got a microphone for some reason. What's that all about? Congratulations, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you, Rod. I just wanted to say, I want to take a minute just to say that we at FINRA are really excited about what we've been able to accomplish so far with our self-service analytics and limitless scalability. And as we look to the future, we're even more excited. More excited about the journey that lies ahead in terms of bringing FINRA's big data to life and putting it to work. So that journey is possible because of the people that we have. It's all about the people, and without them, without the engineers that we have, this wouldn't be possible. So this is for you guys. Thanks.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, man. Excellent. And if folks could all come out, we'll take a group shot here.
We're going to do a group picture.
Oh, okay.
So,
And how about a round of applause for these folks?
yeah, great job, guys.
Excellent, yeah. Come in.
4.
Are we centered?
Probably go a little bit further down. Keep going. It's like a dance.
With the music. Excellent. Thank you all. Thank you all. Two of those. All right, so now I would like to bring back Roseanne Ciccone. Back on.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Rod. Appreciate it. Felt like that was a line dance a little bit right there. Hey, so I have the great opportunity to close out a conference. So there's just a couple things I want to say. First thing I want to say is thank you, all of you. I know your time is valuable, and you made a lot of investments of time and energy and money to be here this week. I hope you found it valuable. And I was trying to think of some words. Okay, valuable. But I hope it was interesting. I hope it was thought-provoking. I hope you made some new friendships. I hope you were able not just to network, but to engage deeply in topics that are really important to you, important to your professional career, to your organization's success. And I hope you take that information and that learning and those connections and really go beyond the conference and continue to interact with those folks who can help you. Whether they're from Pentaho, whether they're peers, whether they're our partners, to really help you be successful. I mean, one of the things about Pentaho that I've always loved is we're pretty passionate about our customer success and understanding the stories and making it personal for you. So hopefully we've done a little of that this week, and hopefully we continue this journey together. So I want to thank all of you for that engagement this week. And maybe I'll just close with one other thing, and that is I've had a lot of people ask me about the content that was available this week. Whether that content was in the breakout sessions or on the main stage or in the CUBE kind of interviews. All of that content's been recorded and will be available, for distribution. So if you were worried about a session you didn't get to and you wanted to see the speaker session along with the slide deck, all of that will be available. So as soon as we get all of that framed up and in a position where we can get that available to you, we'll send you out a password that'll then get you access to all the content. So hopefully you found the content valuable, the experience valuable. I want to thank all of you for such a great week. And from the bottom of Pentaho's heart, I really want to, again, thank you for the engagement. Have a great rest of the week and a safe travel back home.
Back